Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Terrible Video Gamers Club GameClub podcast. I'm your host, Josh Cox, joined by Tyler Schatz.
Hello.
And Alex Purdy.
Hello, everybody.
This week we played the Stanley Parable. It's a little sort of choose-your-own-adventure style game. It's first-person perspective, kind of all about the role of choice in games is how I kind of viewed it. I had played it before. It was one of the games that I had chosen, and the randomizer selected it. I guess first impressions, what did y'all think of the game? Tyler?
So this is the first time I had ever played it. I will say I enjoyed it up until towards the end of my time. I think I put maybe, let's say, 2.9 hours according to Steam into it. I enjoyed it right up until kind of towards the end when I was like, okay, this is just kind of a lot of doing the same thing over and over and over. Heard?
Yeah, also my first time, I enjoyed it the whole time. I only played for exactly an hour. I plan on playing it again because I'm trying to get to some endings and I literally can't. I don't know what I'm missing, but that's maybe a topic for a little bit later. But it was a little repetitive with the leave the office, go to the meeting room, make your decisions. But it was I enjoyed, especially, not to digress too much, but the weird little Easter eggs in there with, like, when you're in the meeting room, how not to get fired, yes. Show up, do perfect work, enslave your life to the company, don't mess up, and don't get fired. It's like little things like that all over. Like, there was it said, like, who farted. I found that stuff very funny. But anyway, I enjoyed my time playing for sure.
Yeah, I really enjoy the sense of humor in that game. I don't know that I'm sure there's folks that don't find it funny or whatever, but like it just has a lot of different witty things that games just don't do, in my opinion, normally. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that first caught me with it, especially with the demo. If you end up wanting to experience more of it, you can check that out. I believe I mentioned it last time, but just the way that it uses very typical video game stereotypes and tropes, if you will, to kind of go ahead and just turn things on their head and give you something it creates a room for a joke and creates a room for a new scenario where you can go completely out of left field and do something weird. Yeah. So it's kind of to give a setup about how the Stanley Parable generally works is you start off in an office and a narrator is describing that you are Stanley. You work in this office. You do the same job day in, day out. And then for whatever reason, on this particular day, no commands come in for you to do your job. And then you pretty much take control at that point, and you can look around the office. You don't see anybody else there. And from that point, the crux of the game really is you walk through a fairly linear corridor, and you get to a point where there's two doors in a room. And the narrator, who's been describing things as you walk through that, says Stanley took the door on the left to get to the meeting room. And at that point, you don't have to listen to the narrator. Did you guys follow the narrator your first time, or did you go away from it? Do you respect authority, or do you push it away whenever you get a chance?
I'll go first. I decided as soon as I hit that door, I was like, this is the point where I make my decision. Like, just like you're saying, do I follow him? And then I was definitely overthinking, like, if I follow him, will that actually penalize me in a way? But so I decided after that first door, when you go left, I was like, I'm just going to listen to everything he says and see what happens. And then when I played again, because you had mentioned, it's a relatively quick playthrough, I was like, then I'll decide to take the right door and see what happens from there. So I definitely respected authority in the beginning. If I knew what would happen regardless of the choice I made, I might not have cared, because like I know when you take the right door, it does just lead you to the same spot, unless you decide to take that elevator, which I did eventually. But yeah, I definitely respected the authority the first time, just because I was a little scared.
Right.
Yeah, my first time too. I'm renegade for life there. I did not listen to the narrator at all. I just took off down that right door. And just kind of wandered around there for a bit.
Yep. So yeah, it's definitely a cool little situation, the way it sets it up. Because like you mentioned, Purd, where you end up if you follow the narrator all the way to the very end, then it takes you through this vast mind control room where you can see cameras set up for everybody else in the office. Every worker has their own dedicated camera feed, and it's all this talk about mind control and the enslavement of the job and all this other stuff. And it's fairly heavy stuff, but also if you just listen to the narrator, that's your first time playing. It's kind of bizarre, but I mean, you're also there's so many different ways that story can kind of go that it's strange that the most direct path is kind of such a heavy one.
Yeah.
But I did find it interesting. So I said, I've got a giant list here. I have a picture map. It's essentially like a decision tree where it's like, oh, do you do this? Go left. Do you do that? Go right. And then it shows it branching off here. And so I've done most of these because I had already played through a lot of them in my previous time. And so I went through and I went ahead and started trying to track them down. Do you have that image up, Perd?
I do. I just pulled it up.
Would you say you've done... how many endings would you say you got in your time of an hour?
Oh, man. So my most recent one was the confusing ending, is what the game calls it.
Yeah.
Which is, to be fair, very well named. Man, not enough of them. The one I've been trying to really get to is one of these heaven endings. I feel like I haven't gotten...
The heaven endings they're involved. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've gotten to the museum to end it. That actually happened on my first playthrough that I didn't listen to the narrator.
Yep.
But yeah.
I'd say the museum one is probably one of the more easy ones too, which is another one that I had forgotten it. It was probably one of the first or second ones I did whenever I played it originally. And so I had just forgotten that thing even existed. We had a brief discussion before the podcast at one point about it, and you mentioned the museum, and I said, what museum is he even talking about? And so I went back and I looked for it specifically, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, this place. So, yeah.
Yeah, that one's really cool, too, because you can, they give a lot of information on the production of the game and the changes over time, and even down to, we modeled Stanley's computer to look like this, but we changed it 3 times in the course of a year. It's like... little things that don't really matter to the player that matter a lot to the devs.
Little things that don't really matter is the tagline of the Stanley Parable. I didn't realize before, but that you can it starts the game in 4:3. It's set to not widescreen effectively. And I never realized it before, but the Stanley's computer in the background of the loading screen is a 4:3 computer, and if you go ahead and swap it to widescreen, it also gives him a widescreen monitor. So,
are you serious?
Yeah, just like completely little things like that. Yeah, so I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I really like that. I call that a dev room, basically, that you stumble into there. That kind of described all of the process and stuff like that they went through with the game. I really liked that. That was really interesting and kind of informative to see what they had changed to the game during those times.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also strange. I don't know. It's trying to think, and I'll probably discuss it more in a bit, but the idea of showing you the potential of the game without giving away what the rest of the game is a tricky thing. And I think putting that museum in there, to me, it's a bit of a bittersweet thing, because it would be nice to see that after you've experienced a lot of the other things. But to me, I feel like it's probably one of the first handful of options that folks will run into, because it is kind of off, like it's just almost the first or second step off the main path. So it's interesting that they have that there whenever you probably haven't experienced a lot of those other endings, because it'll say like, oh, in the apartment ending this happens. So yeah, it's just an interesting way to go about it, I think.
Yeah, I think I stumbled across that thing relatively right away there, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, there's a lot more to this game that I still haven't even found yet.
And that's the flip side of it too, is once you see that museum, you think like, oh, they're referencing so many other things that I have no idea are even in this game. Because you think like from that first little bit, you're like, well, it's either this corridor of office buildings or it's that corridor of office buildings. And yeah, there's just so much to get. And it's the way that they do it is, I think, pretty clever, because you get to that point where you have those 2 doors and you can go left or you go right. And then essentially, if you go right, you're the rebel there. Then he says like, oh, well, you can also take this door on your left to get back to the main thing. And if you take that door, then there's a little elevator that Purdy referenced, and that takes you to the museum. But also, back at that original hallway, before you turn back left, you can keep going past that door. And then there's another door open at the end of the hallway. And then there's a cargo elevator that you can take across the way. And then there's 2 doors over there. And then also you can jump off that elevator onto a catwalk. And then there's a whole other story over there. It's the way that it branches off is wild, in my opinion.
Or you don't even just get on that cargo elevator. You just throw yourself right off.
Yeah, you could just kill yourself there. And it's like, oh, well, Stanley killed himself because he just wanted to show how in control he was. Yeah, all right. Good point, narrator. And yeah, the narrator is such a great character.
Oh my gosh, he is so good.
Well, I love his voice. He's slightly antagonistic to Stanley a lot of the time. And other times it's like he's just kind of, I don't know, trying to find his own little happiness of a sort. I don't know. I guess in your endings, what did you guys make of him?
I was gonna say this is definitely too, like, just even speaking of the narrator in like a broader sense, this is definitely a game that can kind of do what it did because it's so there's a lot to it, but it's like so small in scope that you can kind of write all of this quippy dialogue and stuff for it because the player can only go this way or that way. So I really kind of like that, kind of just about everything you kind of did was kind of written.
Yeah.
In some way, it kind of guided along there. Like the big one I was like was the broom closet stuff. He really hated me going in that broom closet. God dang it, I was going to go in it anyways.
It's like the first door you can open on your own.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, oh my gosh, there's something going on here. And then he's just like, there is nothing in this broom closet. So why are you going in here?
Well, and I don't know if you end up sticking around there long enough, it'll end the game and you'll get a broom closet ending. And then it'll restart the game for you. And then he boards up the broom closet so you can't go back in.
So I never got that. Like I kept reading about all of these different endings where if you just stick around long enough, it's like, okay, how long do I have to wait? Because I went in there, he told me not to go in there, and then I think I went in there one more time and he really said, hey, don't go back in there. And I think like every subsequent time I went back that way, he usually had it boarded up.
Okay,
so I never got like the broom closet ending.
Yeah, it might not technically. Oh yeah, it's a manual restart. Okay, so,
okay.
Sorry, I was referencing this. I knew that it had a separate. It had a branch that ended, but that's because it doesn't progress the story after that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of little things like that where there will be tons of different, technically endings where you just like you that's the end of the content, and you're put yourself in a position where you can't necessarily leave. So just go ahead and hit escape and restart the game. One of my favorite ones is you can get to a point where you teach the narrator that whenever he gives you a choice, you'll take whatever he doesn't want you to do. And so then he just removes all choice for you. And so then he just gives you a stairwell that's just endlessly going up. And that's all you can do is walk up the stairs. And eventually he's like, well, this is boring. And then he gives you one other room to go into. And it's just this large star field that you're looking up at and just watching all these pretty lights go overhead. And he's just happy to be hanging out with you at that point. And at that point, you can spend as much time there as you want. Or by putting a ending to the stairwell at that point, you can walk off the stairwell. And it's not far enough to kill you like the warehouse one. So you just fall enough to get hurt and have to crawl back up the stairs and do it again. And then crawl back up the stairs. And the whole time he's just begging for you. It's tragic, but it's just such a bizarre thing that they've gone to that level and just like thought through that, like, well, yeah, we can add this part just all about how the narrator just wants to hang out with you at this point. And he just doesn't understand why you're making these human choices. Yeah. So was there any particular, I guess the whole thing, I think, in my opinion, is a surprising game because it's always about like what's around the next corner and you probably aren't going to be able to predict it. Was there any particular big surprise moment for y'all?
Yeah, for me was finding myself in Minecraft all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then Portal shortly after that.
Yeah, so whenever you talk about that moment with someone who has not seen it, it's fantastic. So yes.
How do you get to this ending? I need to.
Yeah, do you want to walk through?
I don't remember how I did it. I don't know if it was the red and blue door dilemma there, or if
it is the red blue door. That. So eventually, if you, it's through the red blue doors, and he eventually decides if you follow the other one of those, whenever he gives you what he thinks is one choice, So it gets to the point, there's a red door and a blue door, and he's saying, hey, Stanley took the red door, and you can walk through the blue door or whatever it is. And eventually he removes the blue door, he thinks, but it's actually just on the wall behind you, so you can walk through it at that point. And then he eventually goes like, all right, you just don't like my game. Fine. Well, let's try another game. I don't know. And then he just has all these different things that he tries to improve the game. He puts a Stanley Parable leaderboard in there that shows the time it takes to complete the game, and he has just all these little things that he adds in there. He's like, and then he has you rate the game and how much you liked it with like the leaderboard added. And eventually you can get in there and he's just like, all right, let's try a different game. I don't know, what else do we have on this computer? And then he just boots up and you're just in Minecraft, and he walks through and he's like, oh yeah, we can build a house. And so he starts like tearing apart blocks and he builds a tiny little house, and you just walk in and he's like, amazing. And then he just like takes some things. He's like, all right, let's go play some Minecraft. And just, he's leading you through it. You can't interact with anything directly like a Minecraft would, which is probably the biggest downside of it, but it looks dang near exactly like it from someone who doesn't play a lot of it. Yeah. It's a great little thing. It also leads to a ending where, it's along that same ending. He eventually gets to the point that he builds his own game, or that might be Minecraft, might be after that. So there's the baby game, right?
Yep. So that's before Minecraft.
Okay.
I have it written down. So yeah, that is like the highest res photo of a baby I've ever seen there, basically.
Yeah. So before he takes you through Minecraft, he goes ahead and invents his own game where it's a baby crawling towards fire, and it's a large blown up photo of a baby on a little peg just moving towards fire, and you have to hit a button and it pushes the baby back to the far right side. And so that's it. You just hit the button and it's whining the whole time, and you're just hitting the button, and every time you hit the button it's just loud and it's just this cacophonous sound. And he goes like, all right, well, I'll check back on you in like 4 hours and we'll see how much you're enjoying the game. You can actually play that game for 4 hours. And he'll end the game, and there'll be this large, you can look it up on YouTube because I'm not going to recommend anybody actually do it, but you can pull it up and see that like it's this large, it takes you to this all white room with black text just talking about the nature of games and stuff. It's bizarre. Also, 2 hours into it, he decides you're not doing enough because you're just hitting a single button. So then he also opens up the wall behind you, and there's a puppy being lowered into a pool full of piranhas, and so you have to hit the other button, which is like, it's not right next to it, so you can't just stand in one spot, so you have to walk over to it, hit that button, walk back, hit the baby button. It's such a bizarre game.
No, I definitely did not do that. I let that baby go right in the fire.
Yep. So then he takes you to Minecraft because he decides that you don't like any of his games. And then once you're done with Minecraft, I think he loads up Portal, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Loads up Portal, because Stanley Parable is made in Source Engine, so he's able to just pretty much straight up use Portal assets through that. It's got the Portal song on the radio and everything. It's a great little gag.
Companion cube.
Yep, companion cube. So you can also apparently in actual Portal, you can break that first puzzle room by basically shoving the cube out the door in time. Somehow, I can't remember exactly the way to do it. You can do the same thing in Stanley Parable, and he'll give you guff there too, just the same way that GLaDOS would. So that's an extra fun little touch.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess we kind of got a little off tangent there. Was there any other surprising points for you, Perd, besides probably the parts you just heard about?
Oh yeah, now I'm looking at the decision tree, and it's like, all right, here's another ending I gotta do. Man, I think my most surprising moment is when, I think the third playthrough, I went following his instructions, but I knew that I wanted to take the escape route to the left right before you go into the mind control facility. And as I'm going down this really long, dark, dimly lit hallway, he's like, if Stanley continues on this path, he will die a violent death. And I'm like, oh God, but I kind of committed to it already. So I went down, and sure enough, I think you almost die a very bad death, and then you actually do die. Like, they kind of trick you, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly now, because it seems like it was so many endings ago.
Right.
But yeah, that was the most like nervous I've been, because I thought someone was going to come out and like chop me up at the end of the hallway or something, and instead I got smushed to death. But
right.
But it was yeah, I mean, it seemed like every ending was a little bit surprising. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
See, I'm trying to look up the chart now, and I'm trying to remember, is that the museum ending? Is that the escape path, or is I thought that was the elevator through the right hall left door?
I don't know. I don't know. There's so many endings, and I can't even find it on the tree. But
yeah, and that is
continue to violent death, and then you eventually don't die. You get a new narrator, and then it's the museum ending.
right. The new narrator. The one time that someone else changes their voice, and there's suddenly a lady talking to you in that ending. Basically, he's talking about like you don't have to do this. You can restart the game.
Yeah.
Which,
but
yeah. There are some very unique endings. Some of them get pretty poignant about just the nature of choice and like the sort of banality of life almost in a weird way. Like the apartment ending, if you wanted to follow that one down a bit, would be Shotzi looks like he's nodding. Did you get that ending?
I took that one down.
Yep. I enjoyed that one a lot because you can also it gets to a point where you can take a phone call. You take a platform up to a place and then there's a phone ringing and he's like, Stanley, you've been neglecting her. It's time. You have to go back to her. And you pick up the phone and it takes you to this apartment and there's a woman's voice that calls through and says, Stanley, I'll get the door in just a minute. And sure enough, it opens up the door and there's a mannequin there and the narrator starts giving you guff about like, what are you talking about? No, you don't have a happy life. You just sit in this job all day, day in, day out. And like he starts making you hit these random buttons on the keyboard to go ahead and just like interact in the way that Stanley would at his computer. And you're just like, each time you hit that, like the home apartment life turns into more of the office. And it's a cool little touch, I think. Yeah. It's some of them I think gonna go on a little too long for what they are. The confusion ending I thought was a really great one in terms of like you get to the point where the narrator loses the plot and you have to go through and Shotzi apparently did not get this one. Because I feel like this one is easy to think that you are done with it and you're not. Did you play the whole thing through, Purdy? Because you said you started it, right?
Which ending?
The confusion ending.
So I got to the screen where it tells you what happens, and that was like literally 20 minutes before we started, and I'm like, I'm gonna come back and see what happens with this ending after, because I didn't want to keep going and then have to like quit out right as we were starting this recording. So like, oh my gosh! But I mean, I read what was gonna happen.
The big schedule, right?
Yeah, where it's like eventually the last line is eventually after a long time Stanley dies. It's just like okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that is actually not to spoil too much, but you don't have much more left. It doesn't actually end up going through all that, but it's basically the narrator loses the plot of the story. Like he goes through and you see things too early, so he restarts the game, and then you go ahead and go through it again, except one of the doors isn't working or something like that. And so then he restarts it again, and then now there's no doors in that room. And then you restart again, there's like all the doors in there. Like there's all these just different things breaking in the game, so he keeps trying to restart it over and over again. And eventually he enlists the help of this large painted yellow line on the floor. This he calls the adventure line.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, we're going to take this adventure line and we're going to find the plot. Let's go. And you can follow the line, and it's a great.
But it doesn't really take you to the plot, does it?
No, eventually it just like it starts just going in circles all over the place. It's lost
into the ceiling.
Starts going into the ceiling, and then eventually you walk around and you don't have the line anymore. Then it like comes crashing back through the ceiling. It's like, oh, you're back. Great. Yeah. So many cool little things that it does that like there's no, as far as I can think about, there's no way you could do something like this, an experience like this outside of video games, which is why I really take a shine to it a lot. It's like there's that interactivity and that freedom of choice is what makes this game, I think.
Yeah, like just speaking of interactivity, like I started the game off just kind of clicking on just about everything I kind of could just to kind of see what would happen.
Stanley was clicking everything.
Yeah, I eventually stumbled into this kind of sequence there where you go through back and forth clicking a bunch of random doors and stuff like that. It eventually popped an achievement. I was like, okay. Yeah, he's like, go click door number 417 10 times. So you go over there and click it like 10 times. All right, now go back to click 427 30 times. It's like, okay.
he's giving you directions for it.
Yeah. And
dang.
I'm not for sure if like I clicked, if every time you said like click it 10 times, if I clicked it 10 times.
Yeah, you just clicked a while until he said something.
Move on. Yep.
That's great. Yeah, because I didn't grab that one this time, and it's one of those I just didn't remember. I had some achievements. I did do the speedrun achievement this time, which requires you to essentially you need to beat the game the main way, where the main path of the story is that you experience all this mind control stuff that I mentioned earlier, and then you can go and turn off the machine, and then you walk out of the office building into a meadow, and you're a free man. So the way you you have to go to the boss's office, and then the narrator gives you the code by saying, there's no way Stanley could possibly know that the code was 4251 or whatever it is. And so then you go ahead and hit that code in, and he goes, but somehow he randomly hit the buttons. And it opens this large secret door, essentially. And then if you restart the game and come back, then the narrator will say, you know the code, whatever. And he just opens the door for you. And you can go ahead. So then it goes ahead and shaves off just enough time for you to be able to go ahead and sprint through the rest of the way and be able to get the achievement in time for the speed run. So cool little things like that, where it relies on you essentially doing all these little extra steps and knowing kind of how to, not knowing how, but just trusting that the game will respect what you're trying to do in some ways. Like it really does feel like they anticipated a lot of what options could be out there. As much as it is a game about being limited by the choices they give you, it doesn't feel very limiting very often in my experience. I don't know, did y'all ever have anything where it's just like you felt stuck?
Well, the confusing ending, you literally have to walk around this never-ending maze that just keeps taking you back to the same rooms for a solid probably 45 seconds. Also, there's one ending where you are like in the basement. If you take the basement out, you just keep walking around in the same circle over and over. I had to have gone 20, 30 times over and over. I can't remember what happens after that, but that was kind of
I think it's the madness ending, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, the one where you end up screaming yourself to death.
Yeah. Stanley just started screaming. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so many good little things. I mean, I didn't want this game club thing to mostly turn into talking about the story, but I feel like that's one of the more fun things about this game is just like all the different little story beats. As little of a story technically as it is, because it almost has, however many blue dots are on here are all that many stories technically on this little grid we're looking at.
I googled. There is 19 confirmed endings.
There we go.
And limitless ways to get there.
I almost regret pulling this out as a choice whenever I did, because as I looked this up, I saw that they were coming out with, I should pull it up the proper name here, the Parable update. Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. It was announced at the Game Awards 2019 to be coming out in 2019, and then it got pushed to 2020, and it got pushed to 2021. So it might be coming out sometime this year. Might get pushed again, who can say? But it is. It will contain the entire Stanley Parable exactly as you originally played it, and adding a whole bunch of new content on top of it. Entirely new endings, content interspersed between the endings, and an all-new script. So it'll be interesting to go back to it. I'm glad to have re-experienced it again here before this ever actually does come out. But yeah, because I mean, once you start doing this this grid path approach to getting all the endings, you really start to feel a little bit more about like how you're starting to see between the seams almost, and you can start to see like, well, yes, you're starting to redo a lot of things to get to those points to find that one little niche where you can change your ending to get to that. But I still think it does a lot of cool things. I can't, like, the art style is good. It's a typical little Source Engine style game. I don't really have too much more to say about it. The audio is good. The graphics are fine. I mean, it's just a really great experience that I recommend anybody do. I don't know, any closing thoughts? Any points you wanted to bring up before wrap up.
Not
was-
I.
I was gonna say maybe that was my problem there, just towards the end of my time of like, I kind of want to see all of these endings, but it's like I don't want to sit here and keep just kind of plowing through the same 3 rooms just over and over. So
Wow.
it's like maybe I'll just sit down and watch it on YouTube at some point in time, just somebody
Yeah.
do kind of a
No.
somewhat run through of it, because it's just like, okay, well, gonna keep going through this. Okay, yep. Did I take this door this time, or do I have to take this other door this time?
Yep.
And then too, like even like I was looking at some guide when I was doing a couple of different runs one night, and some of the endings on there are just like, how would you think to do that? Sometimes, like, I don't know. Did anyone get the? I think it's like the escape pod ending.
Yes. Yeah.
Not I.
I specifically, I don't know that I had gotten it before, but I did it this time. And
So what you do with this one is you basically keep going through like you would in the main path of going through the mind control room. When you get up to the upstairs where the boss's room is, according to the thing here, it says you're supposed to walk into the room and then walk right back out real quickly.
yeah, because
And I was like, who would think to do that? Because then I think you leave after that, and then there's a couple of flights of stairs that you go up, and there's this escape pod that you get in, and then it just reverts you right back to the start, I believe. I don't think anything
yep, no,
fancy
yeah,
after.
because it's one of those things. It's super dark once you get up there. Like you just kind of keep walking into blackness. Is how I did it. Like I couldn't actually see where I was going. I had to one point like I lost track because I was like kind of looking at the edges for see if there was any fun Easter eggs there, and I actually lost where I was going. So I had to like find my way back to the main area, reorient myself, and then go straight at it to actually find the escape pod.
Mhm.
So it's that's an interesting little thing. If you end up wanting to get into more of it, I'd recommend the Stanley Parable demo, of course, and it's a shorter experience for sure, but it has some fantastic little things. There's also some Easter eggs between the two, between the full experience and the demo. Yeah, good time there. And also, there's another game that the developer made called The Beginner's Guide, which is much more. It has a narrator, except it's the actual developer this time, and it goes ahead and it's a story of going through a bunch of different games that a friend of his designed. And you're just experiencing all those, and you're using those to examine the way that person made games, and using that to sort of analyze their thoughts and feelings at the time they made them, and all this stuff. I mean, there's some. It's not as kooky as the Stanley Parable, but I similarly enjoyed it for just being something that kind of just took you through different experiences and had a good little through point to it. So,
Who was the? Sorry, not the narrator. Who was the developer on this game again? I don't know.
I
Who
believe
talked
it's
about
William. It's Pugh, I believe. Crows is the company behind it, but I believe that's.
Yeah.
Trying to find their website. And of course, they don't have the name here. Stanley Parable creator. Davey Wreden, Wreden, and William Pugh, Pugh. So, I believe that's William is the one that made the Beginner's Guide then.
Galactic Cafe says the publisher and developer for the Steam page.
Maybe it's Davey Wreden. Maybe that's it. What's the crows thing? I could have swore I was sitting here on the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. Oh, so
Maybe
Williams' studio, Crows. And so then Davey Wreden must have a different studio or something like that. Yeah. I'm not sure. Let me pull up, because you can buy it as a package deal on Steam, the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide.
Yep, I just saw that.
I'm trying to pull that up here. Okay, so that is from Davey Wreden. So it's not the William half of the Stanley Parable. It's the Davey half. But yeah, still a cool experience. And yeah, $10 for what that's worth. Huh? Any closing thoughts?
Oh, one more quick thing here I noticed too.
Sure.
There was a computer that would be in like the first couple of rooms that you could click on and add an input to, but I never figured out what that was for.
Yeah, where it's like just tracking your inputs. Yeah, I believe that's going towards the heaven ending. So
okay.
You have to basically, you have to hit that button on on one of the computers, and it takes it and just increments it one more, and then you have to find the next one of the computers in your next run, and then hit that, and then it will activate, and then do another run, find the next one. If at any point I believe you like do a run and you don't get the next one, then I think it resets.
Yeah.
And there's all these different things you have to do, and then it basically takes you to another full ending. But it's a very involved ending. It's, I believe, 7 different parts need to be hit before you get to the end. Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, it's I didn't replay it. I feel like I've done it before, but I don't want to speak on it too much. Stanley Parable is a good game if you're just like, I want more of this, but I don't know where to get more of this. It's a good game to pull up a wiki and just kind of follow along and just sometimes just read about things. There's apparently a forum that the creators went to a bunch while they were making the game, and you can put in a console code, or you just type the name of the forum or something like that, and then it will go ahead and turn all the textures into that forum's logo. And yeah, it's just all these weird little Easter eggs in the game about things like that. So, interesting thing. Any closing thoughts, Bird?
None from me. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to playing some more, but I need to follow the guides a bit better so I cannot wander around as much.
Yeah, because I feel like to me, I like the guides at the level where I had like, I'd played a bunch of it, but I just didn't remember like, oh, I remember this ending. I don't remember how to get to it. But I feel like there was definitely a lot of reward to just like getting to that point where, left door, right door. Well, I'm going to go right door. And then at that point, just finding those natural split points. I did like a lot of that, just naturally finding that for sure. Did you use the guide for your 2.9 hours, Shotzi, or did you just like near the end?
Like near the end there, I just kind of pulled up a guide to kind of just start running through some other options there just to see what was out there.
Yeah.
And I didn't go through very many of them, I don't think, though.
Yeah, understand. Because, yeah, there's... At one point, I started the Confusion ending whenever I was going through this one again, and I was like, oh, yeah, this one, okay. And then I forgot that was eventually led to where the adventure line comes in. And so I'm like, well, I'm good tonight. And I just went ahead and quit. And I forgot that, like, that is how you get to the adventure line, is you just keep restarting after things keep breaking worse. So it's a bummer whenever things like that happen. So that part makes it good to have a guide for sure. All right. Well, I mean,
what's our next game?
Yeah, I was gonna sort of lead off there that like with The Walking Dead, we kind of referenced like, well, would you like to play a game like this again? I would like to play a game like Stanley Parable again. I don't know that a game like the Stanley Parable exists.
I don't think so.
If anybody comes across it, please let me know. I'll be glad to play more of it. So yes, Stanley Parable moved down to the completion column. All right. And so now, for those who are not familiar with our process, we have already pre-selected a group of 6 games that we will be playing throughout this season of the Game Club. And we have already chosen 2 of those. The last episode we did was Telltale's The Walking Dead, Season 1. And this episode, of course, we just finished talking about the Stanley Parable. Remaining on the list to choose is Risk of Rain, Deliver Us the Moon, Forza Horizon 4, and The Outer Wilds. So, let's see. I should try and find a way that I can pull up. Yeah, I'll just share my screen. That's smart. Screen too. Yeah, just spin the wheel. All right. Pickerwheel.com. Let's see how good this is.
Do we need to kind of just go through to just a basic thing of asking one another, do we like that game or do we not like that game? Like we kind of did with The Walking Dead there, or?
Wish you could. I think that it seemed like it was a pretty, not unanimous, but yeah, I mean, as it was my choice, I think it's one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it as much or will come to if you're going to continue playing more of it. But I just think I enjoy games that aren't doing just the same old thing. Like as much as Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the original was groundbreaking in the way it did a lot of things, that series as a whole, like the newest Call of Duty Modern Warfare will never be one of my favorite games of all time because it's just kind of doing the same thing that a million of their own games have done before. So the Stanley Parable easily has a place in my heart just for doing something so unique and such a clever, fun way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say I liked the game there. It's just like towards the end, I'm kind of like, okay, there's more endings to see here, but I don't really know if I want to commit to going through them myself or if I just want to watch it on YouTube. I like the game overall. Like I like the humor. I like the story. The story, air quotes around there,
Right.
what the game was there. But like just towards the end, I just kind of ran out of steam. I don't want to kind of keep running through a bunch of stuff on here just to see another ending.
I guess I can kind of be a good middleman. It's something I definitely enjoyed and found funny, and I like the little. I don't know if I'd call it much of a story, because like the story.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, it's not something I'm gonna like come back to every week. But when I'm just kind of in that mood where it's like, what should I play? I can totally see myself just popping it on for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, trying to get a different ending, or however long it takes, of course, because some of them. Take a lot longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you start in the top left corner of this branch and you go down to the bottom right corner, that one takes a while. I did that one the other day, and that's, yeah. I guess there you go. Explore the original Stanley mod map and all these things. Yeah, those. Play Minecraft, play Portal. Yep, that's a long one. So yeah, there's plenty to do there, but I don't know. It's one of those things that's just a nice. It's a nice, simple game. There's probably a lot of things you could do to really analyze it and start to think about, like, well, what does the narrator mean when he says this? Like, I don't know that they really thought about that whenever they were making it. Maybe they were, and there's this deeper level that I'm not even considering. But it's a fun enough game for you to just kind of let it wash over you and not have to think too hard about it. Just enjoy the experience, really. So, I like that about it.
Exactly, yeah. Just nice, short, simple. Spend 15, 20 minutes playing and then just kind of move on maybe to something else.
No. All right. With that, are we ready to spin the wheel?
Spin that wheel.
All right. So I've got all the games actually here now. So do we want to
move that bus?
Do we want to still do a couple spins previously, or just go right into it and sudden death this wheel?
I think 3 spins is still good.
All right.
Good randomization to it.
Always gotta make us take more time, Tyler.
I know, Purd. You just gotta wait.
For it to not be my game again.
There's all this sound that is going to be on the podcast that y'all are not aware of. That.
Oh no.
Oh man, it is. First of all, I apologize to the listeners. I'm going to go ahead and make a note to lower that volume. Just a moment here. Let me turn this down. I like that has sound, but that's nice. But yeah, we don't need that much sound. 33%. There we go. Oh man, so much bombast compared. Every other picker I'd been doing was just silent. It just like immediately just let's say like, oh, here you go. Here's your choice. Done. All right. I'm not sure what the count. Oh, so it would keep track. Right. 2 birds in a row, so that means we're guaranteed to not have it this time.
It's going to be Risk of Rain. I can feel it.
For the podcast listeners, the first roll was Deliver Us the Moon. Second was Forza Horizon 4. So now the third and final one that counts for all the marbles. The Outer Wilds. Second one of mine.
This one.
I am too. I'm glad because it's one that I chose. But yeah, it's a game that I've heard a lot of really good things about. And from our Lost podcast, the first one where we started the Game Club, we kind of discussed what we liked about games and our favorite sort of games that favorite style of games. And Purd mentioned Subnautica, and I've heard a lot of not direct comparisons. It's not as freeform as Subnautica, but just that sort of sense of wonder and that alien sense of place that you get in Subnautica. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Outer Wilds on that. So hopefully it'll be something that everyone enjoys.
Just to be clear, it's the Outer Wilds, not Outer Worlds.
Yes,
right?
And they came out near the same time too, in the same year for sure. So yes, the Outer Worlds is a Fallout style game from Obsidian, and that is, I wouldn't be excited to play that. It was on Game Pass, might still be. but it's just not my cup of tea these days. It's a little too involved. But the Outer Wilds is a bit more cartoony. It's the basic crux of what I know is that you are basically an astronaut tasked with going out and finding out some things about your planet to maybe save it. So yeah, that's there's a fun little twist that you'll find pretty quick, so I won't give that away. But I've played like a couple hours, but I was on the Xbox version. It was after I moved to PC a bunch and got used to those controls. And it was hard to go back and play a first person game with a joystick. So I am eager to go back and experience it for real with the proper PC experience. So I'll be very curious to see what y'all think. Either y'all heard much about it prior to this?
I haven't.
I think just coming up maybe once or twice in a podcast if I was listening to it, but other than that, nothing really.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's see how it goes then. Loosely, we'll plan 2 weeks from now. Hopefully the weekend, February 28th, the last day of the month, or otherwise a Saturday around there, whatever works for us. We'll plan it out. Any other closing thoughts on this week's episode then?
No.
Oh. Do we want to... I know it's still 2 episodes in. Do we want to plug the email address?
Oh, yes. Yes, Shotzi, why don't you go ahead and say that since I don't remember it?
I don't remember it either here.
Good plug.
Yeah. It's in Discord somewhere here. Yeah, so we've got an email set up for the podcast so that we can go ahead and if you're watching this on YouTube, we've got it there. So yeah, we'll go ahead and it's also great because we have named it after the original club, the Terrible Video Gamers Club. So whenever you log into Google now, it says, "Welcome, Terrible Gamer." And that's just accurate.
Just the greeting I deserve.
All right, is the Terrible Video Gamers Club Game Club. So it's tvgcgameclub at gmail.com. Suggestions, questions, additional thoughts of things that we might have missed and talked about it. Like if you really thought that something in the Stanley Parable was a worthwhile topic and we just missed it, feel free to let us know. Glad to go back and revisit some things, and might be fun to catch up if somebody ends up playing more of one of the games in the next week or next session. Might be a fun little thing to add.
This looks like the Stanley Parable right now.
Yes, I accidentally did some Inception on my screen share. So tvgcgameclub at gmail.com. And I think that'll do it. So thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone.
JC.
Yes.
Don't forget to introduce yourself this time.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
Maybe like a little countdown.
There we go.
Get
All
yourself in the mindset.
You're going to give a countdown?
Oh, sure. Okay. 3, 2, 1.